I think if I'm going to cities or destinations, I'm obviously thinking about style in a holistic way. So, and for me as a creative director, it'd be nice to have authentic architecture and the city and the buildings to be planned in a correct way. So I don't like to go to cities and see street furniture, for example, incorrect street furniture. I mean, the other week I was in Berlin and the only taxi you can get there is a beautiful cream Mercedes because it's authentic, it's German and it works. There are very few destinations that I go to that haven't become very generic. They all seem to be the same. So it's great that an organisation like this can start to inform people about places that maybe are different, offer something unusual.
During our very recent travels, we were in Cambodia, and obviously Angkor Wat and the whole architectural park of Angkor is a fantastic example of something that's ancient, has an amazing story, but equally it attracts millions and millions of people. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It has a lot of protection around it. But one of the things, I think, the digital, kind of the ability to find the information digitally and the ease of travel nowadays, you can get from A to B quite easily, quite cheaply. You have lots of different opportunities to find your travel. It has caused a lot of issues there. They don't limit currently, in my mind, the numbers properly. And if you imagine, it's been hundreds and hundreds of years there. It went to the whole Khmer Rouge. And it was horrible. During Khmer Rouge, they were beheading the Buddhas. They were using the walls of Angkor Wat as their practice. So they were destroying themselves, a lot of it. But now it looks like the biggest threat that the whole Angkor Wat archaeological park has is the tourism, and is the fear of over-tourism. There's a lack of respect, and the idea is the site's supposed to be sacred. If you look at the history of it, and if you're there and you kind of feel around, you walk around and you feel the history around you, but the fact that people don't necessarily respect it, and the real shame is that people tend to go there, knock down a couple of stones and think, I'm taking a piece of history with me, this is cool. But imagine millions of people doing that. So I think more education and more kind of cooperation from different entities together to kind of educate the tourists and travelers to have more respect. I feel that's kind of the negative. But if you look at the positives, it's an old example, but 21 years ago, a place here in Europe, Bilbao, took a complete gamble and went, hey, our industry is failing, we have no money, there's a terrorist attacks happening around us, we have nothing. I went backpacking in '96 and I went straight past Bilbao without even a thought of stopping there. San Sebastian, obviously, and I continued, whereas today everyone who's going, who wants to find out about art, will go to Bilbao because Guggenheim. And since that, they had 19 million visitors, and over 70% come outside of Europe, outside of Spain, sorry. So it's a great example of a very unknown city that couldn't really afford to become anything bigger. People started moving out. There weren't any opportunities for local people, let alone, visitors. It's a great example how it affects the whole economy, and it brings back the fact that how destinations need that culture. They need local culture. They need something that makes the destination a place that people want to come to, and that will bring good things for local people. That will bring good things for everyone, really. And I think, in addition to that, I just wanted to mention that the lesser-known destinations have a harder time of promoting themselves. So I think the Leading Culture Destination Awards are a great opportunity to really kind of, and as part of the jury, it was really interesting to find these places that, or these museums I never heard of, some of them, and shine a light to something that isn't all run by tourists, isn't something that everyone's seen. Because as a traveler, you always want to have a story. You want to come back and say, hey, I did something that I bet you didn't. And that's what social media is all about. It's about bragging what you've done, where have you been, and having that unique story. And how do you create a unique story unless you immerse yourself into local culture and engage with local people? And I think that all marries really, really well together. And I mean, I don't think destination can really exist without culture.
I am an historian, and I'm really terrified by the way in which factual history has been diminished in the digital age. Interpretation and subjectivity are, of course, very important, and it's wonderful in a sense that so many people who perhaps didn't participate previously in cultural events or visit cultural destinations now feel that they have a voice. But nonetheless, there's no sense in culture if it's deracinated. Unless we understand the context of an artwork or of a gallery, an event, a story, we can't really understand it properly. And so I think, again, in terms of curatorial responsibility, yes, it's wonderful that mass media makes cultural events and destinations accessible, but we also have to make them understandable. So I think it's a duty as well as an opportunity.
You know, used to be, as far as if that's the kind of role that museums would have to speak about societal conditions. Used to be museums were like secular churches, you know, where people pay homage to the greatest creations of mankind. But I think that changed. I think it was 40 years ago when someone said about museums that it should no longer be about just something, but be for someone. I think that single comment, I forget the name of the gentleman, and I should remember, but I think that instigated a tectonic change in the way museums and libraries do their business. I think what happens is education becomes very important. Trying to incite critical thinking becomes important. At Ayala Museum, which is the museum I run in the Philippines, we strive daily to mount exhibitions that hopefully let our visitors look at Philippine history, art, and culture with fresh eyes. It's not enough that I show you what was in the past. The idea is to use these objects in our collections to make you understand the complexity of the context that these materials came from. I mean, clearly it was complex historical, societal, political, social situation that brought out these things. I mean, one of our biggest inspirations when we were charting this kind of strategy for our museum was British Museum's 100 Objects that tell the history of the world. I mean, and these were old objects, so there was a way of being able to bring out meaning that's significant today, and that's really what we try to do, to connect the meaning of our collections to life today and world today. Oftentimes, we also do exhibitions like Bursting at the Seams, which will be disturbing and disruptive and make people think. Again, with the objective to shake you and make you think more a little bit deeply. And then we also use technology. Just 2 days ago, we launched a virtual reality film about 4 significant events in Philippine history. And for us, it heightened the experience, the joy and wonder of learning, because virtual reality has such a powerful way of making you empathize. And so in a sense, back to the question, yes, I think it is our job to bring about opportunities for people to understand better the circumstances that surround them using what we have in the museum. I think particularly because we are a history and art museum, and I think one of our Philippine historians said it best. You know, his name is Dr. Ambeth Ocampo, and he said, history does not repeat itself. It has no power, it has no force. We repeat history, and the reason why we repeat history is because we don't know it. And so that's what we're trying to put across. It's important, using what we have, being a dynamic cultural institution, to try and make people know their history. And we will do it in whatever fashion we feel is interesting and provocative. And so, yeah, I think that's probably what museums should be doing. Provoke curiosity at the very least.
I think what will kind of differentiate the most successful cultural destinations in the future is really a focus on particularity, a particularity of kind of mission, real clarity about what they are trying to achieve, and I think it's going to be more and more experience driven. I think people to kind of engage with an institution, they need to kind of experience it, and I think that's going to be one of the kind of main drivers of not just viewing but participatory engagement with the institution, which I think is going to be absolutely kind of critical. I think that I think one of the patterns I think we might begin to see is kind of revealing more behind the curtain. So how does the institution actually operate? It's no longer this hands-off kind of palace with which you then reverentially visit and then leave. It's something much more inclusive, and for you to understand what goes on behind the scenes and expose what goes on behind the scenes. So it's much more participatory, as well as viewing the art, or it might be dance or music or any other medium. But it's actually understanding how that is produced, why it's produced, and who is involved in producing it. And that will add the richness to the experience, which will then kind of collectively create more powerful institutions in themselves. I think the final element that I think we'll see, which is already beginning to happen, but I think will be emerging ever stronger, is the outreach of that institution beyond just the physical. I think this is obviously a pattern that we've seen in all sorts of different realms, but within institutions particularly that really require that connectivity and the knowledge of the institution before you visit, that outreach is going to be critical, so you really understand that message, which then draws you to engage much more. So I think cultural institutions, almost more than any other kind of area, will need to have that outreach, and I think we'll see more of that.
Yeah, and I think just picking up on the experiential, I think what we mustn't also do as museums progress and evolve is not lose track of what makes it a really cool place to hang out as well. And I think an
informality to that.
Yeah, you want to just go and hang out there for a period of time. You want to go and hang out there for half a day. It's not just going in single-minded. You want to be able to go and do the academic thing if you want to, but you want to just be able to go and sit down on a bench and watch the world go by for 3 hours, and all of a sudden 3 hours is gone and you've just had an incredible day.
It's much less precious, I think will be a pattern, which I think is an extremely good thing, because it's removing some of the elitist, traditional elitist leanings of some institutions, and I think that's a really good thing.